what's the process of applying to an MFA program specifically? Because we see, there are these Facebook groups called the MFA Draft. There are all these online, help forums where people are talking about how awful the application process is and how hard it is and how you're not going to get it anywhere for 5 years. Apply to 20 programs. If you get into one, you thank your lucky stars. So it's interesting. And the kinds of people who end up at this program, they're not usually the prototypical hyper competitive people that you might expect to meet, people who are applying to med school and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So, what was your process like when you were applying to these programs? Did you find any of these groups? Were you thinking about any of these things as you were applying, or were you kind of more tuning it all out? I'm going to focus on me. What was your process like?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So to take things back to the title of your show, Desert Crossing, I had to cross a metaphorical desert in my mind to even become, to come to a space where I felt confident enough to even apply in the first place. So I specialize in creative nonfiction. That's the primary genre that I work with, and it's the process of writing true stories in a creative way. And I didn't even realize that there was a word for that genre or that, that type of writing even existed until I was a senior in high school. And then as soon as I learned about creative nonfiction more, I just knew that that was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And that was, I graduated high school in 2010, and then I went to Ohio State right after that, and I took creative nonfiction classes when I was a freshman and a sophomore. And then by the time I graduated in 2014, I just felt like this overwhelming sense of imposter syndrome and like dread, like thinking about applying to grad school. And I think that might come from the fact that I'm like a first gen student. I'm the first person in my family to go to college, let alone like think about applying to grad school. So I didn't really have like a mentor that I could ask questions of that was like readily available to me, because I was also like really shy in undergrad and didn't really, I made relationships with a couple of my professors, but one of them, she had retired by then, and then another person was actually a grad student who had graduated a long time ago. So I was just kind of, just vibing, just existing. So that's how I ended up working as a barista for like 5 years after graduating from Ohio State.
Yeah, so you graduated from undergrad, and you took a while to work first. Even though you did you already know that you wanted to write at that point?
Yeah,
or?
I already knew. And every year I would tell my friends, this is the year I'm going to apply to MFA programs. Yeah. No, this is the year. And then it really took me going to therapy and working some things out with depression and anxiety and self-doubt and everything. And I started doing that in 2018. And then by the time 2019 came around, I was like, no, this is actually the year. And I did it. I applied to programs like in December of 2019. And then, here I am. I got accepted like at the start of the pandemic. So getting those acceptance letters, like right when everything was hitting the fan, it kind of took the luster off of things. I couldn't really celebrate with my friends or family or, anybody except my partner and my cats who live with me. So
shout out Sir Douglas.
Yeah.
He's a knight.
Mm-hmm. In shining armor. So it was kind of strange to not be able to visit Fairbanks before getting accepted. I just moved across the country, almost 4,000 miles, just, sight unseen. And I
don't know if you were like me, but I went on YouTube to try to find videos of the Fairbanks campus because I also could not visit beforehand. And when I was deciding between a couple of programs, but this was by far the best offer that was on the table. And so it kind of seemed like, okay, the University of Alaska Fairbanks is the way to go. Before we jump into like this program and Fairbanks and whatnot, I want to question you a little bit about the application process as well, just because these are questions people ask of me a lot of the time. So, you know, these programs, they are always viewed by applicants as hyper competitive, and statistically they are, right? And so how is it that you made the decision to come to Fairbanks? How is it that you made the decision even for which schools you were going to apply for? Because I remember reading and saying to myself, okay, I know that if I'm not going to go to a fully funded program where I have a TA-ship or a GA-ship, I will not be able to go to this program, because getting a creative degree without something like that lined up that's going to help me pay the way, financially, it just doesn't make sense for me. I think a lot of artists kind of have to struggle with that, or have to, you know, take it as it comes, as far as like, do I have the ability to actually go to a program like this? And I think you have to think about that in the application process too, right? Like there are some schools that I did not take off my list, and I heard back from them, and one or two of them were acceptances. And I remember thinking to myself, I would get the letter back and say, I don't know why I paid the application fee. I know I can't go there. Like financially, I just can't make it happen. And yeah, I'll try to work something out with the financial aid office, but very quickly kind of discovered that wouldn't be able to happen. So I'm wondering how much of that kind of went into your decision for which schools to apply to. Is that something you thought about, or was it kind of like, I'm going to figure it out once I get in?
No, that was something that I was thinking about a lot from the beginning, and helped me narrow down which schools that I was actually going to apply to. I only applied to schools that offered full funding or a fellowship, because I couldn't afford to. I didn't even know how I was going to afford to move across the country, to be quite honest with you. There's just a lot of miracles that happen to align to bring me here. But I don't want to get into that. But yeah, like narrowing down my list. So I was only applying to schools that were fully funded. And then I had to like narrow down the list even further based on like the application fees. Because like, I mean, as a barista, it's like some of these fees were like $100. Yeah. That's like more than I make in a shift. So I got fee waivers for, I think, maybe like 2 or 3 schools. I applied to 8. Iowa was my top choice, obviously. But I mean, more than just because of its reputation as the best creative writing program in the country, it's because one of my favorite writers is a professor of creative nonfiction there, John DeGata. So I was like actually like really into Iowa, not just because of its reputation, but because I really wanted to work with this specific person. But alas, I knew I wasn't going to get in there, but I always had hopes. But yeah. And
you got to shoot your shot, as the kids say, right? I mean,